Good afternoon. I'm Jamie Gunnell from Node4 and would like to welcome you to our homes and to our Node4 Fortinet Live Q&A. Let's talk SD-WAN. We have a panel of 4 today that, over the next 45 minutes, will try to answer all of your SD-WAN questions. Is SD-WAN a replacement to MPLS? How secure is SD-WAN? Is there a cost saving? What are the benefits of SD-WAN? Let us take the next 45 minutes to answer these questions, gain insight and dispel some myths. So who is on our panel? Well, firstly myself, Jamie Gunnell. I will be your host for this Q&A event. I am the Secure SD-WAN Product Manager at Node4 and have a 20-year background in the IT and telecoms industry. I actually sold my first MPLS network via Demon Internet way back in the year 2000. It was to replace a frame relay network, if anyone can remember one of those. I've seen many changes in the security, networking and connectivity industry since, so really pleased to be involved in this SD-WAN Q&A. I'm also pleased to introduce Glenn Acaster from Node4 to our panel. Glenn is the lead network service architect here at Node4. He has been with Node4 since 2003 and helped design, deliver and support a number of high-profile secure SD-WAN networks supplied by Node4. Glenn brings us first-hand experience of working with SD-WAN solutions and opportunities on a daily basis. We're also delighted to welcome 2 members from Fortinet to our panel. Fortinet are Node4's chosen SD-WAN service provider, located in Sunnyvale, North America, at the heart of Silicon Valley. Fortinet are a global provider of cybersecurity products and services which form part of any SD-WAN solution. We are pleased to have Stephen Mulhern from Fortinet join us. Stephen is Director of Services at Fortinet and has worked for Fortinet for nearly 10 years. An industry veteran, Stephen started in our industry in 1986, having completed a wide range of roles from engineering through sales to product development. So he brings us over 30 years experience to this panel. We have Paul Haynes as well from Fortinet. Paul is an MSSP channel account manager, managed security services provider. He's worked for Fortinet for over a year now, but has a 20-year background in account management across our industry. Paul works with a number of partners, helping them understand the SD-WAN market and supporting them across a wide range of Fortinet's SD-WAN focused products. So just some quick notes before we start. Firstly, all of our viewers are on mute. Unfortunately, we cannot see you all. And I also need to tell you this session is being recorded. In terms of questions, there's a little box to your right for the Q&A. And if you've got any SD-WAN questions that you'd like the panel to answer or discuss, then please do put those through. We will do our best to get through as many questions as we can. And we just got a question through from Gareth. And this probably, I'll direct this to you, Glenn. What are the prerequisites for SD-WAN?
I think in terms of prerequisites, there's probably not that many. It's more of maybe like a cultural shift or a business shift than maybe a technical one. Like I said earlier, I think technically there's not a huge amount that's new. There's a lot of enhancements and things like that. But I think you've got to be ready for SD-WAN. It's a big change. You've got to be ready to remove and consolidate legacy technologies. They might be quite deeply ingrained within your business. Do you have the technical skills to deliver and manage an SD-WAN? If not, you can look at the likes of an MSP to help you along with that. But the main challenge that I come across when I'm delivering the solutions with customers is having to standardize everything. I think that really is where you should focus your time. If you're looking at your prerequisites, you need to look across all of your wide area network, try and bundle sites into categories, and template and standardize your configuration as much as possible.
Thanks, Glenn. And Stephen, obviously you've had a long background in this technology, in this industry. Anything you would like to add to that?
Yeah, and by the way, I do remember frame relay as well. So yeah, so well, I actually remember X25 before that, so I'm really
before my time.
So yeah, I mean, when we're looking at prerequisites, I think if we look at historically, and Glenn pulls up a good point. Technically, there's not a huge amount of groundbreaking stuff that's happening. From SD-WAN. If we look at SD-WAN first came out, 10, 12 years ago, to where it is today, the technology hasn't actually changed that much. My biggest thing that I've seen change is the market has changed. The market has changed because we always used to look and you know, dealing with network operations teams, and it was always, you know, the network drove the applications, as I use that example. That was 10, 12 years ago. You'd almost have to go to ask for permission if you could put an application on the network. Today, the applications drive the network. It's the other way around. And what we're now seeing is it's not can I, it's I have to. The business dynamics have changed. And for me, that, you know, if you're going to look at anything, a prerequisite, get visibility of your applications and understand what is critical to your business, because those are the ones that you're going to have to prioritize and make decisions on.
I think that's a really good point. I think with obviously the current COVID-19 issue, we're seeing a lot more people working from home. You want, in this current climate, I know going back into Node4 offices, people want to know who's coming into the office, where they're going. And it's the same with traffic. You want to know where that traffic's going in your network, who's trying to access your network. How can you manage that traffic? We have to manage people at the moment. Which way can you go in an office? Where can I stand? Where can I wait? And actually, for humans, that's something we're learning. We've got something like SD-WAN is able to provide that type of service. And actually, we've just got a question in from Peter, which probably leads on to, I'll put this to you, Stephen. Is SD-WAN a replacement for MPLS? I know it's certainly a replacement for frame relay, if we want to go that far back. I think we'll concentrate on MPLS.
So, again, you know, depending on which some of the other vendors for SD-WAN to rip and replace MPLS, it actually isn't like that all the time, you know. And as I said, coming from a networking background, I used to design frame relay and MPLS networks. You know, whenever I used to ask this question, the question I'd often get asked is, can SD-WAN give you quality of service? You know, because that is an important concept for us to understand. And if you understand true networking, quality of service, the answer is potentially no. But what you have to start understanding is some applications, a lot of applications are applicable to SD-WAN. So even if you don't replace an MPLS, what you will, an awful lot of companies I'm talking to, they're looking to augment MPLS. So they're looking to maybe reduce some of that MPLS overhead, maybe put certain applications, continue to over that MPLS network, but look at the applications that are applicable to SD-WAN.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's. I've always looked at SD-WAN as an overlay technology on MPLS. I always think with any of these developments, you generally find that a new technology complements a previous technology. So,
Correct. Yeah.
WAN complemented LAN. Frame relay probably complemented WAN. If we want to talk about frame relay again, MPLS complemented frame relay and WAN, and I think SD-WAN complements MPLS. And I'll bring Glenn in because we've sold a number of SD-WAN solutions. And Glenn, are you seeing customers provide SD-WAN over MPLS, or are they looking for just internet-facing connectivity?
Yeah, for me, it's absolutely a complement. All of the solutions that we've delivered have been a blend of internet and MPLS to some degree. And, you know, Steve touches on the point, that quality of service, you just can't get that assurance over a public network, over the internet. And, you know, businesses rely on having reliable SLA-backed connectivity, you know, somewhere to turn if things aren't going so well with that connectivity. But you've got to balance that with the shift towards software as a service, cloud first, multi-cloud, hybrid cloud, whatever terminology you want to use. Everyone's moving applications out of the data center, and you need to avoid a bottleneck that you might have with an MPLS where you're forcing all of that internet bound traffic through that data center. So yeah, I think definitely a complement, but there should be an element of both internet and MPLS, so you have that balance of performance and reliability.
And I think we have such a rich choice of connectivity within this country. We know the government's investing a lot of money into a fibre Britain, and we're seeing localised providers. We're seeing the major carriers increasing their bandwidth, increasing their offering. We're seeing more opportunity for 10 gigabit circuits now. 4G, 5G is coming. You know, the demand for bandwidth is incredible. But being able to control and utilise that bandwidth, I think that's where MPLS and SD-WAN fit very well. And I think using a network provider who's got that MPLS network to really complement that SD-WAN service is only going to demonstrate how powerful your network is with SD-WAN. And I'll ask Paul. Paul, obviously you deal with a number of partners selling this type of solution. Is that what you're seeing in the market? I guess one of the arguments on SD-WAN, the terminology and the first usage cases come from North America, which is obviously much more of a dispersed country, and you don't have a central carrier across the country, which presents its challenges in terms of cost for connectivity. And what are you seeing from your customers?
Yeah, it's an interesting point because and it's something that we do talk about a lot with partners, because SD-WAN by its very nature, there's a lot of buzz around, a lot of hype about it. There's certainly a lot of internet searches that go on behind SD-WAN, and a lot of those result in North American based marketing paraphernalia from a number of different vendors. So we then have a lot of our job is to then translate that to what that looks like in Europe and in UK specifically. And certainly our angle on that is, as Steve and Glenn have mentioned, in the UK, SD-WAN as an overlay to your MPLS is absolutely the main use case that we see and is most relevant to this marketplace.
Thank you. That's good. Yeah, good point. I think we're all in agreement with that. Okay, we've just had a question through on the architecture side, actually, and I'll pass this on to you, Glenn. And the question is, what are the different types of SD-WAN architecture?
Okay, yeah, I think without digging too much into technicalities, I think, you know, you've got to deploy your SD-WAN typically on an appliance on the site. That might be an additional appliance that goes alongside a wide area network, or you might have some sort of all-in-one appliance that does, you know, your full routing stack, your wide area network, and your SD-WAN overlay. But I think you've also got to consider how you integrate security into that, and there's, you know, a few different ways of doing that as well. So your SD-WAN appliance might have security built in to a degree. You might have a fully fledged security appliance that's got SD-WAN built in, kind of the other way around. You might bolt on a dedicated security appliance, but then you've got 3 appliances potentially for your router, your SD-WAN, and your security. And as you can probably appreciate, cost, complexity, and everything else comes into that. Or you can overlay it with cloud security as well. So there's many different ways of doing it, and I think you really need to cut through all the kind of marketing on that and realize which deployment methodology would work best for your business.
So, Stephen, it's probably something that you can expand on.
Yeah, so, you know, if we actually look at the architectures themselves, they actually haven't changed that much, even over the number of years. You know, we look, and I often use this and compare, you know, we're dealing with mature routing mechanisms here. This, you know, when was the last new routing protocol come out? Well, not in quite a while, you know. So if we actually look at that, but I think the most thing that people have to take into account here, or the biggest thing, is how to route the traffic efficiently. What architecture, and you know, Glenn's exactly right. You know, most customers have got something different. They've got their own nuances. They've got, you know, how much do they want? Do they want to give guest Wi-Fi access, guest in access? All of this has an impact on what the architecture looks like. But as long as you understand what your business outcome is that you're trying to achieve here, and you're maintaining those critical applications, that to me is of paramount importance.
And I think that actually leads on quite well to the next question. So we've got a question from Raf around the security side. So how secure is SD-WAN? And I guess I'll carry on with you, Stephen, to expand on that.
Yeah. So this big bad internet, and of course all these lots of bad guys out there and trying to steal your data and do everything else. Yeah, you know, you have to put into account, and so I always use the term risk. Yeah, and risk is not good or bad. It really is just how much is acceptable to your business. And I can look at two types of different organizations, and I always use the example. I look at financial services organization who are typically risk averse. And then I'll look at a retail organization and their appetite is huge in comparison. But the one thing that you have to remember is, Glenn mentioned the different options available. You have to have some security for SD-WAN. Guys, you're not just going to open up your corporate network to the big bad internet. Now, thankfully, we have a number of devices available today, a number of appliances that are literally the security devices in their own right. Yeah. And you have the SD-WAN as well. So that to me is your safe option. Yeah. When it starts to get a little bit questionable is the device that you're using for your SD-WAN truly secure in itself? Has it got security built in from the ground up? And that's what I think people have to look at.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a feature of some of the solutions we've sold. I know, Glenn, you've been heavily involved with some of them. Have you anything further to add to Stephen's points?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like a lot of things in IT and I guess in kind of business processes as well. Like it's as secure as you make it. You can go out and buy a vanilla SD-WAN and it won't have much security built into it, or you can buy a real consolidated and integrated appliance that has SD-WAN, full routing stack, security all in there, and configure that in a way that is also secure as well. So you've got to enable the right features in the right place and follow best practices and hardening standards. So yeah, I think you need to look at what the options are, but also there's definitely a balance between the risk and also the cost, the complexity, and all those other factors that come into it.
So that actually leads on quite nicely to another question we got through, and there's a few. I'm going to jump over a couple, but come back to them. And I'll put this to you, Paul. Does SD-WAN reduce business risk?
Yeah, so I think we've probably touched on areas that it does reduce business risk already, and certainly with regards to the Node4 SD-WAN offering, it's deploying a next generation firewall essentially at the branch. So in terms of security risk, it absolutely ticks those boxes. It's giving you centralized management. A fully managed service takes away the burden of the risk as well for the business and the users on that site. And then also, I suppose the world changed rapidly in the last 6 months, and customers are reaching out to organisations like Node4 for advice on how this is going to look in the new world. Many more. I mean, we're used to remote working, but not on the scale that we're probably going to be used to remote working in the future. So there's a lot of questions around how do we secure people that are logging on in coffee shops, in train stations, in shared workspaces that are going to probably be popping up all over the country very shortly. So that, from a risk perspective, the SD-WAN offering from Node4 definitely it does reduce that risk from a security standpoint.
Perfect. Thanks, Paul. The next question we got in is from Stephen, and it is one we hear a lot, and we probably touched on it a little bit earlier. But does SD-WAN offer a cost saving over MPLS? And as someone that has sold Frame Relay and MPLS, I'm going to pass this to you, Stephen.
All right. Okay.
What have you seen in the market over the years? Is it a cost saving?
So it can help. I think you have to differentiate again, and Paul brought it up earlier. The North American market and the demographics of that market are very different to the European market. And even within Europe, we get different influences and costs associated. What we are finding very much is the The actual MPLS market in itself is extremely competitive in the UK. We know that a number of service providers, including yourselves, you've had these networks in play for a number of years. Yeah. The actual return on investment that you're looking for that means they're very competitively priced from a circuit perspective. So the savings probably aren't the same as we get in North America. I'm going to be very honest with you. But if you actually look at it, and for the advantages and the flexibility that it gives you, both with cloud access and local internet breakout, there are some cost savings to be had, but let's be realistic about it. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I agree. I would say I've sold a number of networks, and I do think it is that message that's been coming over from across the Atlantic. We are seeing people expect a cost saving, but I think we've got a bit more of a mature market now within the UK. I think people like Fortinet are obviously doing well to get that message out. It's something we discuss with customers. I think whenever I've sold a network in the past, I tend to look at the bigger picture, actually. Aside from all your network costs, where are your other costs coming in? What are those costs if you have an outage? What are those costs if you need a quick site up and running? What is the cost if you have a network hack, if there's some data loss in there? Actually, if you've had SD-WAN in the past, that may have helped negate that risk. And I'll bring you back in, Glenn. It's probably worth getting your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I think certainly if you're just comparing the commercials of an MPLS network and an SD-WAN network, I think you're broadly going to see similar figures. I think you need to be thinking about the security, which you mentioned there, which is key to the solutions that we deliver, and obviously a key part of Fortinet's strategy as well, to have that integrated, and the cost of any sort of security breach. Also, because SD-WAN brings all that centralized management automation benefit, I think you need to be looking at it from the angle of efficiency as well. How much engineering time do you need to implement, manage, maintain the solution? Can you integrate it with other IT solutions to streamline processes, to reduce overheads, and make savings in that way? And I think that's where I'm seeing more customers focusing to either develop new features and functionality to get ahead in the market and generate new revenue streams, or to save cost from things like management overheads and system integrations.
So we've just got a question coming from Bruce, actually, that leads into that point. And I'll pass this on to you, Paul. Can SD-WAN improve productivity?
It certainly can, and I think in today's world, users are a very high level of service. So what they're used to in their personal lives, from a technology standpoint, they want now in the business world. And I think one of the main pillars of SD-WAN, understanding the application. So we've got a lot more cloud applications that users are accessing now, 365, Salesforce, all these kind of things. Now, in the way it can improve productivity is by prioritizing traffic for critical applications for your business, and not giving those end users experience the lag and the frustration that they might have previously had, which then obviously causes issues internally with staff. So from that sense, I definitely believe that it can improve your productivity.
And I think that's something we've all become a bit more aware of working from home. I know some very important conference calls have struggled due to bandwidth being used. I don't have children, but I know some of you do, and I'm sure maybe around 3 or 4 o'clock you might see your network start to lag. I've seen kids using 3 or 4 devices at once, all streaming in HD. How is your business critical traffic going to cope with that kind of scenario? So, I think it's something that's definitely going to be looked at a lot more closely by IT managers as we go along. Okay, thanks for that, Bruce. That was a really good question. A question for you, Steve, and it goes back to old technology again. We've had a question. how does SD-WAN compare to site-to-site VPN?
Really good. I'm feeling really old today, by the way. Just to so the point I made right at the beginning of this is what's the key advantages in my experience. This is all about flexibility. This is all about intelligent decisions. We're not dealing with the static environments that we were with corporate data centers and branch offices. It's, if I look at, and a good friend of mine actually, and he was given an example of a large global company, COVID hit. They basically had to get 90,000 people working remotely.
Wow.
That is a challenge. That is where SD-WAN comes into its own because of flexibility. So that to me is the key advantage, that flexibility and giving you the ability to make really smart decisions. That to me is it.
And Glenn, I know obviously in the past that we've looked at deploying SD-WAN to replace some previous type of connections or networks. How does SD-WAN compare to some of those traditional networks like IPsec or VPN?
Yeah, so a lot of the SD-WAN solutions incorporate IPsec, but the key difference is that if you're manually configuring IPsec VPNs, it becomes quite complex quite quickly, especially when you've got a full mesh of quite a number of sites. So again, it's all about reducing complexity. The management controller takes a lot of that challenge away, from you, so that it builds the VPNs between all the sites and does that dynamically in a way that, again, makes the deployment and maintenance of a wide area network more efficient. And that comes back to the cost savings we talked about earlier. And with that added application routing and performance benefits that we've talked about for SD-WAN, I think that means that SD-WAN, for me, is a much better solution than just site-to-site VPNs.
Agreed, completely agree. We've got a good question in from Elizabeth, actually. What are the risks around SD-WAN? Obviously, there's a lot of benefits, but are there any particular risks you can see around SD-WAN? I guess, Stephen, is that something you'd like to answer?
Yeah, no, I'm well happy. As you've heard me mention risk many times, even just on this call, of course, there's a potential for risk. And what we find more and more, and this is where we do encourage an awful lot of organizations, is to use companies and service providers that have experience in it. That is the key advantage of what you guys are offering. And also, we have our professional services and various others, but get the people in that have done it before. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. And therefore, that will in itself massively reduce your risk. Yeah, because you're just learning off somebody else's experience and the way that they do it. And let's be honest, they've done it before. So use it. That would be the key message.
I think that's a really good point, and I do think there are experts out there. There are people that have done it before and got that experience. I think it's very important to seek those people out. You're right. We don't need to rebuild the wheel for this type of service.
Yeah.
And another question around alternatives to SD-WAN. Are there any alternatives to SD-WAN? Maybe what people are using now, anything coming within the future? I'll stay with you on that, Stephen. Anything else that you've seen within the market?
Yeah, so whether you want to call it alternative, we pointed out numerous different times, the term SD-WAN is a far hotter term now than probably it was historically. But again, the demographics have changed. We're looking at the reliability of internet links now versus where they were 10, 15 years ago. The speed that you can get over last mile, fiber to the home, fiber to the curb, all of that from an architecture perspective has changed. What we are seeing is a consolidation. So what I am now starting to see is this SD branch function, Well, I don't want to manage 5, 6, 7 devices at a branch. I want it consolidated into one. Why? Because that reduces my operational overhead. As simple as that. Let's look at the key differentiators for network operators, and it's all about network uptime, operational overhead. If I can improve both of those with what I'm looking for the future, then I'm going to make some advances.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I know a scenario recently. A friend worked for this company, and their internet went down. They're all working remotely. There's about 1,000 of them. Their internet went down for an hour. Doesn't sound long, but that's 1,000 hours of work that has been lost. When you add that up, you add the time involved, the confidence in your staff for that service to work. That plays a big factor into making these decisions. And Glenn, would you have anything else to add to that? Are you seeing any other technologies people are asking for that we're examining? I think Stephen made a really good point about the access layer as well. I know for some of the solutions that we've sold, we've gone as low into that access layer as well for switches and Wi-Fi. What are you seeing out there in terms of alternatives?
Yeah, so I think for the alternatives to SD-WAN, we're still seeing, the technologies that have been around for a long time. People are looking at whether they can just use internet connections from any provider. People are looking at using MPLS still, maybe a VPLS as well, and just kind of doing these things themselves. And I think the SD-WAN is probably still the alternative rather than the other way around. But yeah, when you look at an SD-WAN, you can start to look at how you can enhance that as well. And I think that maybe pales some of the alternatives quite a lot when you look at integrating the SD branch, as it's called, where you bring in that wireless and wired connectivity on the local area network on the branch into the same control plane as the wide area network. And that's just back to that consolidation piece. You consolidate in the connectivity, the security, the local network access, and making it all available and programmable from one platform. I think it's really, really compelling.
Yeah, I completely agree. And Paul, I'll bring you back in. Are you seeing anything else within the market from your partner base?
No, I don't. Not that I've seen specifically, and I think Glenn summed it up fantastically there. It's a lot of the legacy stuff. It's businesses looking at whether they can renegotiate current existing contracts. That regularly occurs. Not everybody is wanting to change. Not everybody has a good change risk profile, like Steve mentioned. So there's people that want to just continue doing what they're doing. So it's obviously our role and the roles of partners like you to explain the benefits of the future and how we can support them to transition.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think understanding that future is quite important. Understand where a company is looking to go. And I do think with what's happened this year, has made people a bit more aware of different ways to work and what could potentially happen. I mean, last year we were discussing SD-WAN and how it would benefit from offices involved in flood areas. We'd seen that. We even saw that earlier in the year around the Derby area. Now we're discussing what happens if you can't leave your house. It's strange to think about it, but actually all this technology can really help give you that business continuity that has been available there in the past, but I don't think it's been brought into one place as it can be with SD-WAN and the right network. We've overrun slightly, but I've got one more question that I wanted to ask, and I want to ask all of the panel. And this question comes from Paula. What is the future for SD-WAN? And I'd like to start with you on that one, Steve. You've seen some changes in the market, and you're not old. Sorry, you're old, not obsolete. That's what I was going to say. What changes have you seen in the market? And where do you think where SD-WAN is going in the future?
For me, it's all about flexibility of connectivity. It's all about how do I use 5G? How do I use other emerging technologies to give me that connectivity, with the speed and reliability? And is it compatible? If I'm looking at SD-WAN solutions today, I want to ensure they have a future. Yeah. What we have seen, we've seen the latest Gartner SASE model, which incorporates SD-WAN massively into the core function. That again, they're talking about consolidating a lot of these features and functions and almost merging networking and security together. That's that's the biggest thing I'm seeing is the demarcation lines between them, they're disappearing.
That's a very good answer. Yeah, I completely agree. Glenn, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think it's a similar story. Further adoption, further consolidation. I think all the market commentators are predicting that SD-WAN is going to continue to, to be adopted more among businesses as they become more comfortable, and as wide area network contracts come up for renewal, they start looking at the alternatives. I think expansion into SD branch, which we've already discussed, adding that wired and wireless is going to become, even bigger as well. And then, potentially overlaying that with what's termed as zero trust network access. So network access control, making sure that all the devices on your network are valid and should be on your network and are continually profiled to make sure that they're not doing anything untoward. And yeah, this new term by Gartner, I think SASE is probably going to take off as well. It's basically the consolidation of SD-WAN, secure web gateway, CASB, and many other things. But my differing opinion to what they say is that it's still going to be a hybrid of on-site appliances and cloud delivery rather than primarily just cloud delivery. That's the way I see it going.
So SASE is adding another acronym into our industry, which is much needed. I'll finish on Paul then. Paul, obviously you're seeing a lot of partners bring SD-WAN opportunities for you. What do you see the future of SD-WAN?
Like Glenn and Steve have summed it up better than I could, but I'd say the SD-WAN means a lot of things to a lot of different people in different ways. So I think the most important thing is, like we touched on earlier, people and businesses are going through a lot of change at the moment. The main thing is to open up that conversation. Don't just read the marketing paraphernalia that you see on the internet. Open up the conversation with the partners, with the vendor, and let's have a proper discussion about what it can actually deliver to organizations.
Excellent, thank you. We've had a few more questions, but we've run out of time, so I do apologise. That brings a close to today's SD-WAN Q&A. Some fantastic questions, great discussion and debates within the panel. So I'd like to thank Glenn, Stephen and Paul for their time today and their contributions in answering those questions. I hope that everyone at home enjoyed that and they got a lot out of this session. At Node4, we're always available for answering any questions that you may have on SD-WAN or any of our services. We did offer private one-to-one calls or webinars when you registered for this service. So if you're interested in those, please do let us know. The event has been recorded. That will be available online shortly. So if you missed the start of the event or you'd like to rewatch and listen to some of our panels, fantastic answers, and then please do let us know. So lastly, I'd like to thank everyone, thank the audience for attending today, all your questions, and thanks to the panel for being on the call today. And as always, if anyone has anything else they'd like to ask us, Node4 or Fortinet, then please do feel free to get in touch. Thank you, everybody.